While Leonardo is finding my PowerPoint, this audience is really to be congratulated that you are all here. I cannot even imagine in the United States an audience that would be so polite and gracious to still be here at this hour for another speaker. I want to start with Chief Justice Berger, as my friend and colleague from the United States, Jeff Singer, did. Also, because I'm going to talk to you for just a very few minutes, I promise, on court-connected ADR, specifically in a state court system. And I'm from the state of Minnesota. Our state has been probably a bit ahead of the curve, but not always in all things. But I think that there would be a lot of similarities in the issues that I'm going to present to you that have occurred in Minnesota. They would be very similar in other states. And at first I thought, how is this going to be relevant? We're going to be talking about international deal making, and I'm going to come up and talk about court in Minnesota. But as I've listened through the day, the kind of themes that different speakers have raised, all of those same themes I think you will also hear from me. But back to Chief Justice Berger. In 1976 is really when most of us see the birth of the growth of court-connected ADR in the United States, because he convened a huge conference to talk about the costs and delays and the overburdened court system, that it was going to become so burdened that it was just going to implode. It was going to disappear over the weight of all the cases that were there. And he and many key speakers at that time talked about the need to determine what had to be in the court system and what could we look at to send to alternatives. And the overriding concern always had to be justice, so that we needed to have justice in whatever the alternatives were, just as we would consider that we would have justice if we stayed in the court system. And from that date, over all the time since, there's been this tremendous growth in the use of alternative dispute resolution, and I'm going to speak in the state court system, and especially of mediation programs. The clear winner in state court systems in the United States has been the use of mediation. And the kinds of cases that I'm talking about where this has been a winner has been personal injury cases, contract cases, discrimination cases, the sort of everyday work of our general civil court system, not small cases, that's something else but not what I'm going to talk about, and not criminal cases, but really the everyday work of a state court system in the United States. So with that as just the little bit of background, I'm going to be speaking from some empirical work that I conducted, two different studies. One asking judges information, and the other asking lawyers. The judges is a study from just this last year. The lawyers is a study from several years ago that actually I replicated in another state. And so I think the kinds of issues that are raised and conclusions are pretty valid. The response rates were very high in both of these studies. And I want to say first, you know, Richard Chow said this morning that institutionalization is a concept that's very easy to talk about, but very hard to come by. I don't know that I totally agree with him. It depends on what state you're talking about and in what way you're talking about it. In many state court systems, there's a fair amount of institutionalization, although the question is what exactly has been institutionalized, which goes to what Mocktel was just talking about in terms of the type of programs, the type of mediation that may be occurring. Certainly in Minnesota, it's very institutionalized. We have a court rule where the lawyers and their clients need to consider using alternative dispute resolution in basically all of their civil cases. And if they consider it and decide not to do it, when they report that to the judge can say, oh, well, that's just fine. I'm glad you decided not to do it, but I'm ordering you to do it. So there's a bit of a carrot and a stick in our particular system, which is a bit unusual in the United States. But there are a fair number of mandatory systems, and really Minnesota's is a mandatory system, except that we use this other word that they just have to consider whether to use it. So looking very quickly, From the judge's data, I have two slides about sort of the mediation success. The judges clearly report that they think there are better, more durable, and more creative outcomes. Now, let me be quick to say the judges don't know if this is really true. This is not empirical work about what is for sure the case. It is what the judges are perceiving. But, of course, the judges are the most important actors in many ways as to whether ADR system will be institutionalized. If the judges are on board and are willing to order parties and understand it, then in fact it will happen and it will be institutionalized. So what they think, what they perceive is critically important. I just want to be sure that you realize that this isn't a matter where there has been good state court research that in fact the agreements are more durable or are more creative. But the judges clearly think that that is the case. They like the fact that the clients are very directly involved in the discussions within the mediation process. They think that's a very important value to the mediation process. They like the fact that mediators can have certain expertise and that that can be helpful to the parties as they discuss their particular settlements. The mediator can do a better job of reality testing. They also very much like the fact that, and they think that, cases settle, they settle earlier, and then, because of that, either they have more time to deal with the cases that don't settle, or they get some of the big issues resolved in a way that then the cases can be better prepared to go to trial. But keep in mind, again, what Jeff Sanger mentioned, in the American litigation system, virtually all cases settle anyway. Now, the judges are perceiving that mediation is helping those cases settle and settle earlier, but they would settle anyway. And as you'll see, I think that that's one of the questions that we really don't have the answers to at this point. Okay, limitations. These are limitations that the judges themselves raised in one form or another. If a case doesn't settle, it adds to party costs. If a case is in a place in Minnesota, we call it outstate. That means not in the urban area. The judge probably has plenty of time to conduct settlement conferences and work with the parties to get them to resolve their cases. So requiring them to go to mediation where they have to pay the mediator may in fact cost those parties more. And those judges very often said, we will go ahead and keep that case. We won't send it to mediation because we don't want to add to party costs. It's not according to justice if we're adding to the party costs. It occurs too late in the system. In most American state court systems, almost all of the discovery period is finished before the parties actually go to mediation. If you remember, part of the reason that this happened was because of cost and delay. It doesn't take away enough cost and delay, in many judges' opinions, if we have all of the discovery and don't go to mediation until really right before the case would go to trial. It certainly saves the trial costs, no doubt about that, but it could be so much more. There is so much more potential. And some states are increasingly adding statutes or court rules that would get the case to mediation at an earlier point in time and provide more time and cost savings.